I think we'll probably, just between our house and our old house that we used to live in that we manage ourselves, we'll probably have $2,000 to $2,500 a month coming in just from those two. And then we have a rental property business that produces income. So the income from the rental property business, then income from our two houses that we have, that's going to cover our expenses, which feels pretty good, right? That's a big part of why this channel's what it's all about. If you can build up to the point where you have rental income coming in or some kind of investment income, it gives you the option to pick up and go. We're not having to think about, can I make enough income? Do I need to save the money? Welcome to the Real Estate and Financial Independence Podcast. I'm your host, Chad Carson. You can call me Coach, and I'm here today with a special episode to talk about why we are moving to Spain. I'm here with my wife, Carson, and we're going to, normally on my podcast episodes, I have a little intro segment where I talk just behind the scenes for 3 minutes. Well, today the entire episode is going to be behind the scenes. I've let little tidbits go in the last month or two that we're making a big trip where we're moving abroad and moving to Spain. But I thought it'd be fun to take everybody behind the scenes and just share the good and the bad and the ugly of our planning process. We haven't moved there yet. We're still here in Clemson, South Carolina, but we're going to be moving in July 2022. So before we get started with that, though, I want to say hello to Carrie, my wife, Carrie. Hi.
Hi, Chad. Hi, everyone.
So I had to talk Carrie once again into coming on a podcast with me. She did one. Don't even remember the episode now, but we talked about stuff on that one. We talked about financial independence and relationships, but thank you for coming on. So, because this is our trip, not just mine.
You're welcome.
All right. So Carrie, the first, I've on Instagram and other places I put out there just to ask some questions of what people would want to know, and also just brainstormed a few things. And I thought the first thing we could talk about is why even take a trip to Spain. And I'm gonna let you take some of these, and I know some of these I might want to take too, but let's let you start with that. Why take a trip to Spain? What's this all about?
Well, why take a trip to Spain? I guess it goes back to the very beginning of our relationship when we first dated. One of the things that we connected on was travel. And so travel is something that fills both of us up. We both like it a lot. And so it's been a part of our relationship from the beginning. And and we just love travel, and that's a big part of the reason.
I was hoping I want you to share one story, because when I first met you, we talked for a long time, and a lot of it was about travel. And you talked about in college studying abroad and going to Spain in particular. So maybe to just kind of talk about where you went and why that was a special trip.
Well, I studied abroad in Spain. I lived in St. Louis all my life, had lived in the same house from 0 to 17, brought home from the hospital. We didn't travel much. My family had never been out of the country. And I caught a travel bug when I was there. I fell in love with the Spanish culture, the way of life, eventually grew to love the Spanish food. I didn't like seafood before I went, and it's a peninsula, and they eat lots of seafood, and now I love it. And it just opened my eyes and completely transformed the way I see things and the whole course of my life. Because of that, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm like, oh, I could be a Spanish teacher. I like this. And so it changed my whole lifestyle, my whole life, and became a Spanish teacher. And I love the Spanish culture, and it's fun to speak another language.
So that was your big kind of life transformational journey. When I was in college, I played football, but I always loved studying abroad as well. And so as soon as I was done with football, I went to Germany. I spoke German in high school and college. But when we first met, that was kind of our thing. So we decided we're going to travel. We've taken other trips. 2009, we took a trip right in the middle of the Great Recession. We took our backpacks, pre-kids, and went to South America. Started in Spain, actually. Went back to where you started in Salamanca, Spain, and lived with a family. I learned to speak Spanish there, beginning to speak Spanish, and then we went to Peru, and that's where I was fluent. I don't call myself fluent anymore. Carrie is a Spanish teacher and speaks very well, but we had a great time. Then in 2017, we went with our kids, and they were 3 and 5. So maybe you could talk about that trip, and then we'll get back to the Spain trip, just the Ecuador trip and what that was all about.
Well, we always wanted to travel abroad with the kids. And so when we went to Ecuador, we talked a lot. I remember when Allie was a baby, we're like, oh, let's go walk the Camino de Santiago. We'll put her in the carrier. We got this. And that was just too much. We never even went camping when Allie was a baby. And so when they were 2 and 4, we started making plans to go to Ecuador for 2 years, actually. And they were a great age. because Serena was in kindergarten and Allie was 3. She was in preschool. And so it was a perfect age. We didn't have to worry about missing their schooling, Serena did miss phonetics. She couldn't spell a whole lot when she got back to the States, but it was a perfect time to go. And it was just great for our family. We thought maybe we would break them or we would make it a positive experience. And they both loved the experience and have such good memories. And it was a great experience as a family. And I'm looking forward to doing it again. We came back in 2018. And so it's been 4 years now, I guess. So
talk a little bit maybe about where our kids are now and also just what our motivations are. Why do this now? Why 2022? Our kids are 9 and 11 now. I was about to say 10, but they're 11. She just turned 11. So maybe talk about why this period of our life.
Well, we knew we wanted to do it again. And right now, next year, she would start middle school. So it's going to be harder and harder and harder to get away because of commitments, because of the level of the activities that they're doing. And so we figure if we try to wait another year or 2 years, it's going to be harder to get away. And so we're just going to do it now.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things for us, just we're kind of nerdy about languages. Carrie's a language teacher and loves grammar, which is kind of odd, but in a fun way. And our kids were fluent for the most part. They were 17 months in Ecuador, and they would come home, and I always loved it. We were at dinner or something, and I would try to speak my Spanish, which I was far ahead of them at that point. And then about 6-7 months in, they started saying, "Papá, no se dice eso." And they would correct me in my Spanish and how bad my pronunciation was. And it was beautiful. I loved it. But you moved back to the United States. We tried to speak Spanish at home a little bit, and it just kind of faltered and went downhill. So I'll speak for myself and you can share too. I think the practical motivation is we'd love for them to have the gift of speaking Spanish more and continuing that fluency. My selfish reason, though, why I want to do it, the kids are a big part of it, but then also for me, just detaching from our everyday lifestyle. I've talked a lot about the mini retirements on this podcast and YouTube video, and it's just getting up from your lifestyle, moving out, doing something different. It's just, I think, in our DNA, so to speak. We just like doing that, and I think we both get the itch to do it. So does that align with your motivation, maybe?
Yeah, I was thinking before we did this that every 4 to 6 years, I usually get an itch. It's time to go. And I wasn't quite there for this one, to be honest. I was thinking about, we'll wait another year. And I was really thinking maybe let Serena start middle school, then pull her out. But I'm afraid if we wait too long, it's just not going to happen. There's never a perfect time to do it. And so, yeah, and it's fun to live abroad in my experience. I love it. I love expat lifestyle, meeting people in another country, living in another culture. It's going to be great for the girls. And also you meet all kinds of interesting people living abroad.
Yeah, so that's the plans. We plan to spend about a year abroad, and plans always kind of should put in quotation marks because our style has been do a lot of preparation, a lot of reading, a lot of interacting with people online, and then we just go, almost like you get dropped in by a parachute. This year is a little different. We're going to talk some details about the practical details of what we're doing, where we're going to school, where we're going to live. But just one final piece just about the big picture of this trip. Are there any reservations that you have? Any concerns about doing this? So we said why we're excited about it, why we want to do it, why we're having this itch. But what about the other side of it?
Concerns. Obviously, the girls is a concern. They're in a different place developmentally. And since we got back, like Chad said, it's really hard to practice language because all the context here is in English. So the minute you start talking about something at school, it switches to English. So their Spanish is not at a very high level. In fact, they don't really remember much at this point. So I'm hoping it's going to come back with the first month, 2 months of being there, but it could take a while. And then developmentally, they're into kids and social relationships. There was already cultural differences at age 5, but now it's really going to be a bigger issue. So I'm concerned about that. And a hesitation, I've just really been digging into my local community here now. Finally got some projects that I'm really excited about here. And so now to pull away from those projects is a little hard for me. So, but we'll find some projects there in Spain and I can keep connected here while there.
Yeah, I think my concern, of course, the kids and their transition, which we're going to talk a little bit more about how to try to help them with that, but also the roots in the community. I think an ongoing conversation with me and Carrie is that we love having roots and we love having connections with a community, whether that's an expat community abroad or whether that's online communities like, with my real estate investing and the Coach Carson. It's just fun to connect with people, and it's not easy all the time to connect with people. So here we are in Clemson, South Carolina. We both volunteer a lot. We have a nonprofit that we're both very active in, building trails and walking paths and trying to make it easier to get around town without walking or without getting in your car. We're involved in our elementary school. Just this week, you're working on International Festival. So we have all these things we're doing, and it feels good to have these connections. It took a long time to meet people and to connect and really contribute and feel like you're part of it. And here we go. We're taking off, and also family is the other, reservation. It's just a little harder to meet, to go visit your family in St. Louis. It's going to be harder. I have family here in South Carolina, brother and sister-in-law, and my mom and dad. So those are definitely concerns, and just you miss people. At the same time, like you said, there's no perfect time. So we're just saying we got to do this, and let's make it happen. So let's talk some of the practical sides of things, and let's talk about kids first, because I think that was something that came up a lot when people were asking questions about it. What are some of the ways that maybe we're not doing this perfectly, but do we hope to help them transition? You mentioned language. Is there maybe just elaborate on that a little bit?
Honestly, this is one area I feel like we have a lot of area for growth. I'm worried about the transition, to be honest. So, been working on Spanish, and I'm not doing as great a job of Spanish as I would like to. I organize some classes online. There's really cool platforms. There's one called italki. You can find a teacher in any country you want, schedule a specific hour, and then have your own private Spanish lesson. So I was doing that for the girls, and it was really hard with the scheduling, with the time zone in Spain, because I really wanted to be Spanish teacher because the Spanish accent is very different than the Ecuadorian, for example. And so trying to prepare them language-wise, but then social, emotional, it's harder. I feel like we need to be doing more, but we've been talking about the trip, and for one of our daughters, it's excellent. It gets her excited. And for the other one, it's more anxiety producing because there's so much unknown. So in my mind, I think the more you know, the better it is, but it might be better for her to wait until we have more specifics.
Yeah, I think it's knowing your kids. We all, if you're a parent, you know how different all of us are as human beings, and our older daughter is very gung-ho and like, give me an adventure, let's go, and let's solve this puzzle. Whereas our younger one likes to dip her toes into everything. And like, I think her style with everything has been, when you first make the change, no, I'm not going to do that. But then you like warm her up, tell stories. And I'm sensing that she's shifting a little bit. They were both, when we first started talking about it, she was like, like had anxiety about it and was like, I don't want to do that. But it has not been like, since then, it hasn't been like, I'm not going, or it's never been that. And we're going to talk about apartments and looking for housing the other day, but I saw her kind of perk up and her eyes kind of lit up when we were looking at this specific place that we might go to. They had a piano in there and she plays piano, and you had something you thought of?
There was one house we looked at, and it was this apartment you could rent on Airbnb, and had a jacuzzi in the master bedroom, like no doors, just part of the bedroom. She's like, let's stay there.
That's where she got really excited.
That's where she was excited. So she might be a little let down with the house we end up with, but yeah, like you said, she's not as reluctant now. Well, she is reluctant, but
seeing the actual place, I sense that maybe sometimes with any travel, when you go abroad, there's so much uncertainty, and that's part of why we like traveling. I feel like the language is one thing, but just getting out of your own comfort zone is such a growth experience for us, and it's very uncomfortable. At the same time, in terms of confidence building, I know both of us have been big believers in going abroad and traveling just for that experience of being thrown into the deep end. Are you going to sink or swim? Let's see how it goes. And so that's part of it. That's part of the transition process that we want them to experience. At the same time, though, you don't just throw somebody in the deep end and just let them drown. So we're trying to figure out how to give her some floaties along the way.
Yeah. And the last time we pretty much dropped them in the deep end, but they are 3 and 5, more flexible. She could get by with language skills because she was in preschool. She could just play with the babies, but
there's only so many words you speak in preschool.
That, mine, your, but now, I forget what I was going to say.
Well, just how do you help them support them now?
Well, we got to think about everything they're leaving behind. They've got good friendships here. They love their school. They love their teachers, everything they know, all their toys. So to leave their comfort zone is hard for us as adults. So for kids, they've got us, our parents, and they've got their sister. But why would you go be uncomfortable? It's really comfortable here. It's nice. So we got to understand all that they're leaving behind.
Yeah, so I don't know if we have any good answers on that, but I do think communication's happening, trying to be little by little communication, trying to get some visuals. This week, we're going to talk about how we're finding housing, but we're just getting some of that solidified a little bit, which is unusual for us. In the past, we've just waited to the last minute and we got there, we figured it out. But this is a little bit different because of getting them schools. So maybe that's a good transition. We're going to talk about visas and our houses, but let's talk about the school situation for them, because that is one of our top priorities. We even looked at different places in Spain, in the world, to say, where can we go where maybe there's some school situations. So how do we even figure out what they're going to do for school. Are they homeschooling? Are they going local? Let's talk about that.
Well, first, I don't want to homeschool. I mean, we always thought it was a great idea, and then we had virtual school, and that was not as wonderful as I thought it was going to be. And so I really think that's really helpful for everyone to integrate if the girls go to a local school. And so we looked at different options. We looked at some private schools. I looked at a Montessori school. And actually we were looking at going to another part of Spain where we have a friend. She had a great school. We could just put our kids in. It would just be smooth, easy transition. Our girls are friends with their girls. But we changed locations because I want to be somewhere sunny. And so we reached out to a company that helps international families settle in Spain. And so they gave us 4 schools. And so we've been looking at those and evaluating those. And it's really hard. When we went to Ecuador, we just dropped in there. One of our friends gave us a list of some schools, but it's really hard to tell much about a school from their website. And so just going there, walking around, getting a feel for it, talking to the teachers. They don't really let you into the classrooms in Ecuador. It was just kind of looking on the outside. Looks like it could be okay. And so this is totally different because we're not going to get to go to Spain to walk around to look at the school. So we're putting a lot of trust in this Christine that's helping us get settled.
Yeah. So I'm going to elaborate on a couple things you just said there. We hired a consultant basically, and that's kind of a cool innovation. We were a little reluctant because we've done things ourselves in the past, but this person's been amazing. Christine's been is a rock star, but helping with finding housing, helping with finding the school. And in the past, we would just either take a scouting trip or just figure it out once you got there. We like doing that. This time around is getting into some of the schools, the public schools. They have an application process. We're in March right now. For August, you're already applying for schools, and there's a few that were in the downtown area where we wanted to live. And I'm going to talk about where we live in a second. We're going to live, so we've had to get a lease on an apartment before we can go get a school there locally. And so this Christine, and I'll put a link to the service in case anybody's looking to go to where we're going in Granada, Spain. But if she can help you, it's just a for-fee service where they walk around, they look at the houses for you, they give you, she went and did a live tour of one of the apartments, and Carrie was on the other line of looking at the video. And so that's how we figured out. We made a priority list of schools we liked, and then now we're trying to solidify the apartment today or the next day or two.
I want to interrupt 1 second because in the past this year we've hired a contractor, a woman to help us with this. In the past, what we've done, we've gone to language schools. So if there's a town that you're looking at, a lot of language schools have online classes. So it'd be great to reach out to the schools. That's actually how we found our apartment when we lived in Ecuador, by reaching out to a local language school. And so that could be something that you're doing if you're looking to do this yourself, to reach out to a language school. They have housing a lot of times, or they can connect you with an apartment. And so that's what we've done in the past.
And Facebook groups and other online groups, we've had a lot of luck with just connect with people. There's always online communities, especially in areas that have more expats. You can ask questions. Where are your kids going to school? Where do you live? Why do you live there? Go look in all the archives. There's so much information. It's totally different than when both of us studied abroad just 18 years ago. And when you had a little calling card that you would go use a payphone to call home or something, there was some internet phone then too, but no, at least not when you were there. You're older than I am, but a few years older. You stood at the payphone. But in any case, so if you're interested in this, that our process was figure out a location where we're going to go. And so I want to talk about that a little bit too. So we figure out a location, and then we figure out some schools, and then this person's helped us know the area we want to live. We wanted to live in a walkable area. We live in a town we are working on making it more walkable. It's a car-centric place. We don't like that as much. So if we're going to go halfway across the world, we want to have a place we can walk everywhere. We love the urban lifestyle, but not quite a huge city. We're not like a New York. We visit New York City, but we don't want to live there. So this is Granada. What we chose is in the south of Spain. It's sunnier. Hot in the summer, but it can be kind of coolish in the winter at night. And it's also really historical and beautiful old town. And maybe you could talk about the neighborhood where we're thinking we're going to end up. Maybe you don't know much about it. You've been there before.
I was there when I was a student. It's been more than 18 years. That's all I'll say. But the neighborhood Albaicín Granada is a really cool town in southern Spain. It was the last stronghold of the Moors in Spain. And so there's a lot of Arabic influence. There's this beautiful palace that was, it's called La Alhambra. And it was Islamic Moorish palace. And so it overlooks the city kind of. And so this neighborhood, Albaicín, I think is the old Moorish neighborhood. And then there's another area of town, the Realejo, which we have, that's more of the old Jewish neighborhood. And so they're old buildings. It's really scenic and beautiful from what we saw on our walk around yesterday.
All on internet, yeah.
But when we traveled there in 2009, and when I was a student back in 97, I remember going to Granada and thinking, oh, I love it here. This is great. And when we traveled in 2009, we also thought the same thing. So, and when we looked at going to Ecuador, we were looking at going to Spain, actually in Granada. So
we've always
here we are.
When you travel, sometimes it's irrational. It doesn't matter why, but we just kind of had emotional attraction to the city, to the layout, to the area. There's a lot of outdoors. We're very into walking and hiking and biking, and there's some outdoor places, woods right nearby. So it's just, you make a list. You check it off. And we also were very tempted to go to Santiago, Spain, where our friend was, and they have a connection.
Santiago de Compostela.
Santiago de Compostela is the end of the Camino de Santiago. Beautiful place, smaller city, which we liked, outdoors. And I think we could have been happy there. It's just a little better, we think, for us in Granada, particularly just the seasonal, not as much gray and rain.
Suppose you look up Santiago de Compostela on Wikipedia. It says one of the rainiest places in Spain. I thought, I like the sunshine. That's why I moved south. So when we were looking at Spain, I was really looking forward to that, but I was not looking forward to the rain. And so we actually looked at Germany as well for this trip because we both have German heritage. Well, do you have German heritage? Yeah, I have German heritage. Our girls are really interested in German, but then we decided it's going to be too dark and cold. So we're headed to, we're soft. I think we get used to it. I think we love it, but Spanish went out.
Yeah. All right. So Granada, Spain, while we're in Spain, we've covered those things. We've talked about kids transition. Let's talk some other practical stuff of going abroad. And one of those is, how do you live abroad longer than 90 days in another country? And there's so many details that we can't do this whole thing on all the details of a visa, but maybe talk about just in general, how we're going to be able to live there in another country and what kinds of things you have to do to be able to live in Spain.
Well, to live in any country for longer than 90 days, as far as I know, you have to, in some countries in Latin America, Argentina, for example, you can just leave the country and come back and it resets. Ecuador is not that way. We got a visa there. And here in Spain, you cannot do that. So you have to apply for a visa. There's different kinds of visas. There's like student visas. And I actually looked at teaching English to be able to get one of those visas through the Spanish government. There's also a non-lucrative visa. There's a visa for entrepreneurs. Spain does not have a digital nomad visa. There's some countries that have those. It's in the process right now. I think it's actually going to come through in like July. which
in the process in Spain, it can mean like, mañana. It could be months, it could be years, who knows. But we're probably pursuing the non-lucrative visa, which means you can't, the whole point of that one is that you're not working in Spain and taking people's jobs. You have to demonstrate that you have some sort of financial backing that can allow you to live there. It could be money in the bank. It could be, pension, if you had pension coming in. That's the process we're going through. And Carrie has been kind of leading that process, getting all the birth certificates, getting there's just a bunch of paperwork that you have to get together. So lots and lots of details.
Yeah, birth certificates, marriage certificates. Then you get them, you receive them, then you have to get them official. You don't need to know all these details. You have to have an official stamp called an apostille. So after you get them, then you send them to the Secretary of State to get a special stamp put on them. And then once you get them, we haven't gotten to this, then you send them to an official recognized translator, recognized by the Spanish government. Then they're going to translate all of our documents, and then we'll get them back, and then we can submit our application. But we also have to secure health insurance. You can't go to Spain without health insurance.
So we'll get some kind of private health insurance. There's a couple recommendations, again, through our consultant that we've been working with. There's just some companies that you can buy health insurance through. And I actually haven't thought about, we use the health exchange, Obamacare, to get our health insurance. So I think we'll probably cancel that starting, we haven't even talked that much about it, the second half of this year. We'll probably cancel it the second half of this year and then restart it in July of 2023 when we come back. That's my little research I've done on it, but that's another question we're going to have to look into. But the point is, there's a bunch of details. Pretty much if you get all that and you check all those off the list and you have enough money in the bank, then you can usually get those. It's not like a limited number. Yeah, fingers crossed. But it's something that we have to go through, and it's a lot of process. But that's that. Well, once we get that, we'll have permission to live abroad for 12 months, which is about what we want to do. All right. Next practical subject for moving to Spain for us is the home back in the United States. So I guess just give us a higher level idea of what we're doing with our house.
So we are planning to rent our house, do a year-long lease for our house here. And there's a lot of steps that we'll have to take to get that. We have a couple of repairs that are we've got calls in to repair people to fix, and then we're going to list it and we'll manage it from Spain. So we also have to get a city inspection done to be able to rent it and hopefully find a good family. We'd like to rent it furnished, or we can also rent it unfurnished. So we have a lot of stuff we have to move though.
Yeah, that's another hidden secret reason why we travel, is because you get so much junk, and then when you travel for a year, it forces you just to purge, get rid of stuff, just toss it. But yeah, I think out of all the things, I don't think we've talked about this, but out of all the things for us to go abroad, I think the house gives me the most just like deep breath. Like, oh my God, we got to do all this junk and this stuff and move this out. And I'm in the housing business. So like I think renting the house is not my biggest concern. It's just, we had a debate. We debated between short-term rental and long-term rental. We do Airbnb for game day rentals because we have football games here in Clemson. And so we have a great vacation rental manager. They gave us some numbers on what that would look like doing vacation rental for the house while we were gone, doing short-term rental. The city of Clemson has regulations where you can only rent it 25 nights per year. And so that kind of makes it so it's not as lucrative to do that. I think we probably would do that if we could rent it more short-term, because then we could leave stuff, move all our personal stuff out. But in the end, I ran the numbers, and I think we can get on the low end $1,500 per month, on the high end $2,000 per month as a long-term rental. So we've actually looked at rentals we didn't talk about the numbers in Granada, but $1,250 or euros per month plus 250 in utilities. So let's call that 1,500 euros, whatever that exchange rate is, probably $1,750 or $1,800. So like it's almost like 1-to-1. We can rent our house out. We'll have some property taxes and insurance. We don't have a mortgage on the house. And so that'll pretty much our rent on our house will cover our housing in Spain. So that's pretty cool. And we just like the certainty of having a long-term renter. We've done this before. When we were in Ecuador, we rented our house for 2 years, found a great couple to rent it. When we went in 2009, we rented our house. So this is one of if you learn how to do the real estate business, it's yes, there's some steps. We got to get personal stuff off the walls. We got to get, just pictures in the basement, and there's a lot of storage. There's a lot of purging. That's going to be weekends and weekends this spring.
We need to start now.
Yeah, we need
to start 2 months ago.
I keep on saying that every weekend. We're like, oh, let's go take a hike. Let's go do this. And I'm like, no, we got stuff. Let's get rid of this stuff.
This is the least we've ever traveled in this year building up to this.
So coronavirus. So the house is a big deal. And I think that's something that keeps people at home sometimes. And one of our philosophies with our houses has always been to have flexibility with our house, because we know we want to travel. We even, to the point we don't have pets. We probably would have gotten pets at some point, but we know, all right, we're going for 12 months. That's going to be hard. And some people take their pets with them. So if you do find yourself in that situation, we've had lots of friends to do that. But yeah, there's some practical steps we're going to be doing. Maybe that's another longer conversation, but the house is a big step. Something else is just that people have asked about is the money. Like, how do you pay for a trip abroad? How much does it cost? I don't know, we hadn't even discussed this, like the budget side of things, but when we were in Ecuador, I kept a pretty tight budget. I think we spent $3,000 per month in Ecuador. It was very inexpensive for us coming from the United States. Our budget was probably, as a family, was probably $4,000 or $5,000 before we left, and we went to Ecuador, and it's $3,000. And I don't know, I've been thinking maybe $5,000 to $8,000 per month. Do you have any ideas on the budget in Spain?
I don't know, but I'm guessing it'll be similar to this. The good thing is our girls will be going into state schools in Spain, so we won't have a private school. Hopefully it works out. We won't have a private school payment to make each month, though. I think it will be pretty comparable to living here. From what my friend said, my friend that lives in Spain sent me a picture of she came here to visit, and she could not get over spending $5 for a cup of coffee. She went home and promptly sent me a picture from a local coffee shop of €1 with 50 cents. And so I think it's going to be cheaper in some ways.
Yeah, there'll be some things cheaper, some things more expensive.
Our health insurance will be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, we pay
what
a lot.
It costs 1 month here will be the entire year there.
So we're actually going to save some money in some places, but I would bet $5,000 a month we could probably do. But then if you add some trips, we want to, we're not going to skimp. We're going to go to some trips to, our girls want to go to Greece. They want to go to Italy. They've been reading about that a lot. I want to go to Germany and go back and visit friends there. So we're going to be doing traveling. We're going to have fun. We're going to rent cars here and there, take flights. So, I think it could get into that $7,000-8,000 a month type range. So how do you pay for that? Like in our case, this is a big part of the channel is financial independence. And we've kind of built up to this point, but when we were in Ecuador, the $3,000 a month we spent was definitely covered by rental income, by renting our house. And I think we'll probably just between our house and our old house that we used to live in that we manage ourselves, we'll probably have $2,000 to $2,500 a month coming in just from those two. And then we have a rental property business that produces income. So that the income from the rental property business, then income from our 2 houses that we have, that's going to cover our expenses, which feels pretty good, right? That's a big part of why this channel's what it's all about. If you can build up to the point where you have rental income coming in or some kind of investment income, it gives you the option to pick up and go. We're not having to think about, can I make enough income? Do I need to save the money? We are saving some extra money too, but that's it's not as much of a concern as the last 2 trips. I just haven't thought about it as much. It's been, okay, yeah, we'll just use the money.
I was going to say that we do have some friends that do this, but they're able to work abroad. So when we were in Ecuador, we had a couple of friends that had their own business and they ran their business online from there. So that's an option too, even if you don't have the passive income coming in.
Yep. All right. So budget we've talked about, let's talk a little bit about just what happens with the rental business itself. I guess I can talk more about this. I had some questions about if you go abroad, you have these properties, what's going to happen? Who's managing them? What are some systems that you talk about? And the number one response I have is people. We have a team of people on the ground for our rental property business, which is bigger. We have about 110 units, and I have a business partner first and foremost. That's very helpful, but both of us are more passive at this point. So even when I'm at home, maybe it depends on the week, but some weeks are a couple hours. Some weeks when we're doing taxes and other things, or I'm meeting with property managers, it's more. But I'm not the one going to the house and doing the repairs. I'm not the one leasing the properties. So we have great property managers who do that. And so my communication with them is kind of a big part of what I have to do. And I can do that from Spain. Did it from Ecuador. I can do it from Clemson.
I also wanted to add that when we were traveling in 2009, you were not as passive and you were more active in the management. So I remember one case, we were in a park in Buenos Aires and the plumber called Chad. He's like, because we have internet phones, so you can any place you have Wi-Fi, you have your phone. So we have the same phone number there and here. So he called. He's like, Chad, could you come over? Chad's like, I can't quite get to the house today, but if you could take a picture and send it to me, I'll send you a check. And so with technology, it's pretty amazing. And then if you have, like Chad said, a good team, people that you can go to help you with your plumber, your electrician, and then someone that can be on the ground for you at home.
Yep. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, right? To build systems, to build teams of people, to find people you trust, that doesn't happen overnight, but I feel really good about it now. It's, like I said earlier, getting our house is probably my biggest concern, and finding a school and finding places to go. The rental property business is definitely, I want to pay attention to it, but even here, I'm not as involved as I used to be. So that's kind of deliberate. And so when we're there, I'm going to be, I'll get texts every week from our property managers, but I'm not actively paying most of the bills. There's 2 or 3 bills that I still pay to like our lawn guy and things like that. And I just go on remote bill pay, and they email me the invoice. I send it. I go online and send the check, and that's that, or send a digital payment. So the real estate business itself is much different. I will do some bookkeeping while I'm there still. We have a remote access to QuickBooks, and we still do that. But the 2 properties that we own and manage ourselves, Carrie and I do, we will take calls on those. So like we'll communicate with the tenant. Here's a list of people that we use for heating and air, for plumbing. If you can't get us, just call these people, send them out there. And that's, the tenant, they're a responsible tenant. They don't mind doing that. You're still solving the problem. They still text us, let us know about it. But if we happen to not be with our phone or something, that's what we'll do. A couple other practical things, this being the Coach Carson kind of business and channel. How does that work? I was just going to talk a little bit about that. It's kind of a joke. Carrie has said, like, we need to go abroad so that I could write a book.
Chad was originally talking about, had some ideas for a book. I'm like, well, I guess we're going to be going abroad again. And like within 2 weeks, Chad's like, I've been thinking about going abroad again because he needs the space to be able to detach from all the commitments here.
Yeah. So I'm actually under contract to write a book with Bigger Pockets again. So that's going to happen, and it's going to be related to. We're working on the title and all, but it's all about the audience on this channel, on this podcast, the small and mighty real estate investors. So it's going to be a rental property focused book, and the nuts and bolts of keeping it small and still living a big life. So doing this kind of stuff, traveling abroad. So that. There'll be more to come about that, but yeah, I'm going to be working on the book while we're there, just having some space. And one of the things I love about when we were in Ecuador is just I pinch myself sometimes because it's like, wow, we're living in this other place. You have to detach yourself naturally from meetings and things you normally do local. People can't just say, hey, you want to go meet at the coffee shop? It's like, well, even if you'd love to, like, no, can't do it. And so it's, at least locally. So it just gave me a little bit more space just walking around town and thinking. And so intellectually, it was a nice process of me kind of going deeper with my thoughts. Not that we weren't social when we were there as well. I don't know.
I was going to say, just not having all the commitments here in the United States, it's random that you can say, hey, call someone up, let's go get coffee. Or usually you have to schedule, well, maybe not usually, maybe not your friends, but some people you have to schedule a week out, 2 weeks out to get together for lunch. And with other expats, the lifestyle is a little bit more flexible in our experience in Ecuador. And I think in Spain, it'll be similar, but you could just run into someone on the street. Hey, let's go get dinner. And so not having all those other commitments that we have here, it opens up our schedule. So freedom with your schedule, and then freedom with your mind, I guess, to be able to go deep and not have so many things pulling at your attention.
And learn. We both love to learn. And so I'll be taking Spanish lessons, I know, just to try to rekindle my Spanish as well. But we also just learn local things. We take yoga. The kinds of things we do with our time there is very similar to what we do here. Lots of exercise, lots of walking, lots of taking the kids to school, doing activities with them, going to the park. We play ultimate frisbee when we were in Ecuador, for example. And so a lot of what we do, we try to, our style of travel is to go somewhere else, stay there, and live there just like you're living in that place. Go to school, grocery shop. You're always going to be an expat, right? You're not going to be 100% a local, but it's a different style. I'm sure we'll do some of the tourist stuff. We'll go see this site, go to this museum, go to this cathedral. But most of the time, it's the everyday things. It's going to the market and seeing how you buy an avocado there, or how what the food is like in the regular market, or just the little things are what I found to be fascinating on a day-to-day life.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like too, is just to find your way around the city, find those little rincones in Spanish, the little places your little favorite places around town. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that's a fun aspect of it I'm looking forward to. And just the things that we do here, I think it's helpful to know what you like to do. And so knowing the things that make us happy, and for our girls too, we're going to find local music classes for them, and hopefully some soccer, maybe some volleyball, things that they like to do here, to find that there, to keep some continuity. And like Chad said, there's a lot of families that do year abroad, and they're in a different city every 2 weeks, and that is not our cup of tea. We like to get to know a place, dig in. We're never going to be locals, but to get to know a city on a deeper level.
Yeah, so that's our plan, day-to-day life. I'm still going to be making YouTube videos probably, although I'm going to probably kind of tone back some of the coursework just by necessity. But the timing of having live calls is not going to be as good. Maybe our internet's not going to be as good. We're not sure. But it's part of this exercise for me on a personal level. And this is so funny. Like in 2000, Carrie has been a big help for me in this respect. Is that I go after stuff. I'm intense. I like to, even though I'm not working as much in the real estate business, I have Coach Carson stuff, and I'm making videos, and I'm doing this nonprofit. So these kind of mini retirements for me are nice, just to pull back a little bit, to slow my pace, which is another thing I love about Latin America and Spain. I've found that many of our friends there appreciate the slow life and the enjoying food, enjoying friends, and taking your time with things. And that was something I certainly had to learn and have come to appreciate. So I hope that's a part of what we do as well.
Yeah. When you said that, it made me think of Spaniards. From my friend that I talked to, people there, they work long hours. People work hard, but Spaniards, in my experience, really savor and appreciate the relationships and time with people. When I studied there, I couldn't believe it seemed like there was a holiday every other week. And I didn't know why, but it was great to get out to the countryside and go have picnics with friends. But people work hard there. But for us, it would be nice to have a little break from the grind here in the States.
Okay, I think that's the main highlights I wanted to cover in terms of practical side of this trip, why we're going and how we're going to do it. I think just to wrap it up, if people are listening to this, some people want to do this. Some people are like, I'd never do that. That sounds great for you guys, but not for me. But maybe let's just close with a couple thoughts that can relate to our own story. But if somebody is thinking about taking a trip abroad, maybe with a family, maybe by themselves, you're a Spanish teacher and also, culturally have been to a lot of places. Maybe do you have any final tips or just ideas that might help people who are thinking about taking their own trip?
There's a lot to that. As you're saying that, I have a lot of thoughts that come to mind. First of all, decide what you like. And I mean, if you're thinking about if you're going to do the trip, there's a lot of things that have to fall in place. You've got to make schedules. Last time when we went in 2009, I requested a leave of absence, which I was really scared about with my job, but thankfully they offered me health insurance when I went abroad, just as long as I came back. So that worked out really well. So there's the logistics, but then finding the place that you want to go. I always recommend language schools when you're going abroad, just as one place to plug in. We talk about dropping in somewhere, but I like to have some things set and some connections somehow that you're not so grounded. Some people think that when you go abroad, it's just all butterflies and rainbows and sunshine, and it's fun. The first 2 months are great. And then there's often a place of cultural, I forget what you call it, but a crisis period. Like after 2 months, the newness wears off, and then there's just a culture shock. I guess that's what it is. And everything's hard. You don't have the relationships here, so you've got to build those friendships. So it's not always easy. So just prepare yourself for the fun things, and then also know that it's going to be challenging. And hopefully, if you're there long enough, you can wait it out and get through back so that it's a fun experience. So talking about preparing our girls, we need to prepare ourselves for that crisis. I think it might be a period that one of us is going to be having a breakdown. So prepare ourselves, know that's coming, and have the patience, hopefully, to get through it.
Do you mind if I briefly tell our Ecuador breakdown story? I'll tell you. You can pitch into. We finally found an apartment. This wasn't it was about 6 weeks into our trip. We'd been traveling around, going from here to there, looking for schools. Carrie was just going all over the place because she was the better language speaker. We finally found what we thought was going to be our permanent apartment. We move in. It's supposed to be cleaned. And the very first night, we're like, oh, let's just lay down. Let's go to sleep. We're so tired. And we lay down, and Carrie bolts up in bed and says, "There's hair on the bed." And so I flip the lights on, and sure enough, these sheets had not been clean. There's hairs all over the bed. And Carrie's, we both just were like, oh, this is too much. It seems pretty small, I guess, but it just was.
And the bathtub was dirty. There was a ringer on the bathtub. Yeah. It was not a very good welcome to our new home.
Yeah. So I think you realize the things that there's so many little comforts. There's little supports that you have in your life, whether it's relationships, whether it's a place, whether it's your routine. Yeah. And I think this is a great part about traveling, but it's uncomfortable that you get thrown out of your routine. And some of those crisis moments are the best growth moments too, because I feel like on the other side of that, it's kind of like a hero's journey with Joseph Campbell, who I like to read a lot. You have to go through that dark space in order to get to the place where you kind of form yourself anew. And that's part of it. And I'm glad you mentioned that it's not all roses. It is wonderful, but it's not a vacation. This is in our experience, it's a lot different than a vacation. It's more akin to moving to a new city like you would in the United States or wherever you live. And then you're having to adjust and make those adjustments on the fly. So yeah, I think all your recommendations are great, and just be prepared for that.
Yeah. And also you talking about that was one of the things, once we finally had our place, when we finally got in a routine with our family, that was, with our kids, having a routine is really, really important for our family and for kids, especially. So that was when things started to normalize. When we finally had schools, we had a routine, and that's not vacation, and that's normal life. And so.
Yeah, my final tip is just to keep an open mind. I think we all of us, pointing myself, you get sort of a preconceived idea of your own country, of other countries. And one of the beautiful things about travel, maybe the most beautiful thing, is that you see the people are different and the same everywhere you go. There are families everywhere you go. There are decent people. If you watch the news, you think the world is an awful place. And yes, certainly there are awful people right now as we're speaking. There's a lot of stuff going on. But I've been really encouraged everywhere I go, because it just confirms that, most people are just, They're shopping at markets. They're going to work. They're trying to support their family. If they have kids, they're trying to make the best thing they can for their kids. People have sense of humor. There's jerks everywhere. There's wonderful people everywhere. Sometimes the same person's both, and so if you just go with that open mind that, hey, people are people everywhere, and yet there are these cultural differences that you have to just be open to going with that and learning from that and stumbling. I always tell myself I'm not a great language speaker, but you need to be prepared to be a preschooler with your language and just a caveman or cavewoman and just do it and make a fool out of yourself. And that's okay. Have a laugh. It helps me not take myself so seriously. And that's a good thing.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for bearing with us on this little bit different episode. We hope you found this helpful. If you have other questions that came up as you're watching this, it's going to be, of course, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can also go to the YouTube version of this video and watch it there and leave some comments, leave some questions there. We'd love to hear from you. And I hope to hear about your own travels if you choose to do this. And if you have any specific questions that we can help with, of course, we'll try to do that. I'll put links there's several things we mentioned, like Carrie mentioned, italki and some resources for learning languages. We have a couple specific resources that we use to help us transition to Spain. I'll put that down as well. Any other final resources we need to share, Carrie, or is that it?
That's it. When you're looking at it too, you'll need to look at the country that you're looking at to look at the visa requirements. The extended stay is different for every country, and that's a big piece of being able to stay legally in a country. Yeah,
stay legally. That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. I want to also thank, of course, every single episode I get help from Michael Wen, who's the editor and kind of content director extraordinaire. Megan Thompson is my virtual assistant and community manager with Coach Carson, who helps a lot. And I always thank Carrie too on the podcast. Thank you, Carrie, for everything you do to help behind the scenes. This is a partnership at Coach Carson. And thank all of you who listen and watch this. You are the reason I do this and record this every week, because I get feedback from you that is helpful. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.